Hello, hello. Happy Monday. Happy live session day. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. This is the Divorce Allies live session. We do this every Monday. 90 minutes is all for you. So you have the comments to ask any questions you want. If you have any input, any situations happening that you need some clarity on, we're here for you. This session is all about parenting and creating your parenting plan, also with a little bit of mindset switch as we head into a new month. I cannot believe it is already March. This is craziness. But the beginning of the month is always time for a good reset. So today we have Emily Flowers and Melissa Gregg. They are in the same room. So they're doing the in-person meeting. And then we have Cristin Terri, who's the co-parenting specialist, and myself. Emily is in charge of the houses, Melissa's finance and strategy, and I'm a little bit more in the post-divorce phase. So we always like to start with a meditation. So Cristin, please take it away.
Thank you so much, and welcome to everyone. As always, before we start our meditation, let's make sure that we are nice and comfortable, maybe having our feet firmly grounded on the floor, ensuring your spine is nice and straight. Maybe shrug those shoulders a little bit, kind of drop them. So today we're going to slow down before we ask you to put some thought into structure and stability going forward. So once you've closed your eyes, we're just going to start with a simple breathing rhythm today. We're going to start by inhaling with 4 and exhaling with 6. We're going to take a nice deep breath in through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. And exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale and count to 4. As you feel your lungs expand, and exhale slowly through the mouth. Nice slow count. 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to continue this for another 3 cycles. Just gently inhaling, becoming present, becoming aware, and exhale in your own rhythm. Just in for 4 and out for 6. With every exhale, let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw soften. Let your nervous system settle. As we allow our breath to return to its natural rhythm, I want you to imagine now your feet growing roots in the ground. Not rushed, not panicked, just steady. Divorce can feel a little chaotic, but right now you are stable. You are not in danger. You are preparing. Visualize those roots growing deeper and deeper. You do not need to rush. You do not need to react. You are allowed to build carefully. Structure creates safety. Clarity creates confidence. Preparation creates peace. Just visualizing your breath being calm, your feet grounded, rooted, and stable. Your heartbeat slowing down. If your thoughts wander, just gently bring them back to your breath, back to this moment, back to this space. As we allow that sense of calm to wash over us, noticing our breath has slowed, our heart has slowed. We are calm. Now I want you to start welcoming gently some movement back into your fingers and your toes. Maybe getting some movement in the rest of your body. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. I hope everyone enjoyed that. I unfortunately had to switch my camera off because there is a little bit of tech issues here in Africa today. But we usually do a nice little round robin to check in where everyone is in our specific fields. I might as well go first quickly and then I'll pass on to everyone else. This week was just more dealing with a frustrated one parent coming to the table, drafting a parenting plan, one parent doing all the work and feeling a lot of frustration. The other parent was not doing their part. And all you can say is this isn't uncommon. If you are the proactive parent, then take on that role. I have seen clients get frustrated and want to be spiteful and say, well, I'm not going to do it then. And just remind yourself in these moments, you're not doing it for your ex-spouse, you're doing it for your kids. So it's a very simple one, but frustration when you're bringing your part, this goes through the divorce into co-parenting long after. If you feel like you're carrying more, maybe you've always carried more, um, sometimes we just have to take the short end of the stick and realize that it's for the better of our kids. And co-parenting, divorce, we always say this in the Divorce Allies, it's not fair. So the sooner we get used to the idea that it's not fair, the easier your life will become. So Melissa and Emily, are we going to go to the duo today? What's going on in your worlds?
Oh, I'm up. Okay. We had a call on Friday. An attorney had referred, I think both of us, Melissa and I, and the gal, I guess, called me, and very urgent. She has mediation on Tuesday, so tomorrow, and is in desperate need of getting finances in order. They have a house, this and that, and I think people get torn between, what they're going to pay for when it comes to resources and experts and things like that. And it is hard to choose. And I realize that this has nothing to do with the housing market, but I think it's still an important point to reiterate is, you've got attorneys, you've got, financial professionals, you've got all these people, and you're trying to figure out either A, how you're going to pay for each person, or B, like, if you should, because you're being torn in so many different directions. And the attorneys take up that large chunk, and you're just at this point trying to figure out. It feels like what you're going to get out of it is diminishing. It's like shrinking like this, and then you feel like you're paying all these people out, and it was sort of like, oh, I don't know that I need mortgage help. And it's like, well, if you have a house, maybe determining what you should do with it, or if you could keep it, or what your options are, or whatever, it's a good idea, because the other people in the room don't have the actual mortgage knowledge to help you make those decisions. And so, because there's so many little nuances and intricacies involved in that. So it's always a good idea to just kind of get your bearings on the mortgage side, because the attorney doesn't do those. They just say, do you want the house, or do you want the house, or are we going to sell the house? And they have no idea. And then it's also tied to the language that goes into your settlement agreement. So even Melissa and I separate the house differently in divorce. Now we're learning how we can put those two things together when we're working with the finances, and we're starting to really come together on those things. But it's interesting if you have the right people in the room and you're paying the exact right people, how beautifully and easily and inexpensively this can come together, and you're getting the right knowledge.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think it's an efficiency thing, like what we try to do here is, even today we're going to talk about a parenting plan. Could you do it on your own? Sure. Is it beneficial to have an expert give you some good language, or to come in and strategize on how to present it? Yes. And what we encourage, and what I'm noticing is that we're prepping for a lot of mediation. We're talking to a lot of attorneys around the country who are like, oh, I don't know if you need, that just yet. Like, let's see what happens in mediation. And from a lot of perspective, you need to come in with a full parenting plan. You need to come in with a full settlement offer. You need to come in with knowing if you can keep the house or not. And some of the legwork that you do beforehand, even if your team is not championing it, in your heart of hearts, if it's important, if the parenting plan is the most important, if custody is the most important, it doesn't matter if somebody's like, oh, we'll figure it out, or, oh, we'll talk it about. Like, what we're telling you is you need to advocate for yourself and say, no, this is important to me. I want to put some time into it. I want to understand it. And we'll talk about some of the negotiation pieces after, in the latter part of this kind of presentation. But at the end of the day, all of these pieces, if they are important to you, you may have to advocate if they don't let me in to the room, and as a consultant, I can sometimes get into the mediation faster than if I'm the expert witness, but everybody is barricading that, like lawyers are gatekeeping certain things, the mediator is going to gatekeep certain things. And at the end of the day, there are no rules in this space. If you realize it's you and your spouse, your money, your kids, your life, you have to start advocating for yourself and get the right players involved. Go to the furthest extent that you want, or use the resources to save time and money. But everything that we provide, I think, is ladder, like download the guide, download Cristin's, summaries, and then work with a strategist. It's hard to contain the lawyers once you've already, like, I had a call this morning of like, can I have them not review every offer unless I think that it's a good offer? I'm like, sure, you can ask them that, but you're changing the game. So it's better to hire people at the beginning that are part of this cohesive team. And even then, when you hire them, they may send you an email this weekend and you thought Friday was very clear, but this weekend they send an email as if they didn't even listen to what the team strategy was. So if you're the leader of that, then you will tell them what's important. You will come in to mediation or a settlement offer with a full parenting plan that they will edit, as opposed to trying to work together to create some of these things. The working together, the trying to go back and forth on a parenting plan, it's going to cost you a lot of money, as opposed to creating a template of any of these things that you then allow people to just spend a little bit time editing or critiquing or changing, but you've put forth a big, robust plan to begin with. So that's what I think I see people are not knowing that they can control some of this and take it into their own purview.
Or that they should plan it all out and bring something to the table when it comes to mediation instead of letting the wave hit them when they get there.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
agree with that.
Yeah, in my world, it's pretty much just a repetition of last week's message. I was talking to someone who she is an empty nester. She wants to start her own podcast. And so I was talking her through everything. And then I kind of assumed I shouldn't. And I said, you're doing video on this, right? And she was like, well, no, I'm just going to stick with audio. And then I just walked her through all the benefits of video, because I don't think still to this point, so many people understand the benefits of video, because then once you start doing video, eventually everything can be put onto YouTube Shorts, on TikTok, on Instagram. Because she was then asking, well, if I do an audio podcast, how am I supposed to promote this? How am I supposed to get this out there? And I said, well, that is the benefit of doing video then, because at that point you already have built-in marketing. So I know a lot of times when people start these big projects, the thought of doing video is very overwhelming and scary. And then there comes to just a disconnect of, what do I do with all this video? How am I supposed to edit this? Who's going to edit it for me? It seems like it's hours and hours of work. But again, in the beginning, if you just need to start there. But doing video on anything, whether it's a podcast, whether it's you just want to start your YouTube or truly start your social media. I always just, you heard a whole 90-minute session last week of the beauty of starting with video, because you can repurpose it from anything from there. So whether if you're thinking about a podcast these days, or just starting a website, or even a social media, start with video, pull the transcript. I sound like a broken record right now, but that's truly, we just want to get it into your head. If you want to build anything, start with video, pull the transcript, and head to AI. So that was my little convo this week, Cristin. So should we get into parenting plans then?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to piggyback before we move forward on Melissa and Emily. There's so much you can take control, and 100% you can do a parenting plan yourself. The whole point of divorce, as Melissa pointed out to Kelly, it's you and your ex-spouse that need to just figure out a way to split everything. All the legal and the process and all of that just overwhelms you and makes this whole process seem a lot more complicated than it actually is. So yeah, over the last 2 sessions that I had led, the first one we did a bit about stabilizing your nervous system, redirecting your mindset on co-parenting and separating custody. And then week 2, we did a little bit about clarifying what actually matters in a parenting plan. So today I just want to go through with you my system, which you can write down some of these questions if you want, anything that screams out to you. You can use ChatGPT to kind of help you build your parenting plan as well. This is just kind of a whole thought out process. So yeah, most parents walk into mediation and try and build from scratch. Whereas even just with the system, it'll give you a very clear framework that you can from there on just edit, nitpick, negotiate on the points that you need to. Let me share my screen with you guys here. Okay. Right. So I hope everyone can see that all right. So the system comprises of a few different parts: a guidebook, a questionnaire, a clause library, and AI prompts that you can take all your answers with the clause library and the guidebook, use the prompts, and it will spit out a parenting plan. Now, this is a once-off cost versus what you would be paying with the attorneys, as we mentioned. I will open the guidebook quickly because this is step 1. So once you purchase the system, you get this whole link here, which is through our lovely Bubble app. Let me just open this for you guys. Oh, there we go. Hold up. Let's see here. Sorry, it's taking a little bit of a time here. So I'll just run through the guidebook. Firstly, for you, it's very handy to read the guidebook. Why is it not opened? Let me just see here. Share this tab instead. Okay. And full screen. Let's see here. So this guidebook is, you'll see here, it's the first part of the parenting plan system. It will show you how to use this guide. I'm not going to go through that. I'll just skip through straight away to, this gives you a whole outline on how the parenting plan system works. This first section here will go through with you the foundations of a focused parenting plan. So if you're still in the very early phases and you're not sure, this is just going to give you a good outline on what to expect when drafting a parenting plan, what you need to be considering and looking out for. So that's chapter 1, section 1. Section 2 is what most of us parents worry about in the beginning, is telling your children. So we have an entire chapter here on how to tell your children, timing, when and how to have the conversation, things like avoiding special occasions, considering timing when one of the parents should move out. For example, I'll give you one here as a general guide. Younger children, before one of the parents move out of the family home, you don't want to give them a month or 2 months notice. For younger kids, that's a little bit long for them, and the anticipation and the anxiety is a bit long. So we generally recommend around 2 to 3 weeks notice for a child. As much as you've had time to prepare for the separation, we do need to allow our children to have that time to prepare for the separation if one of the parents is moving out or when one of the parents moves out. With older children and teenagers, you can probably look at about 1 month's notice. Anything shorter, they may feel it's being sprung on them. Anything longer, they're living in this perpetual anxiety of when it's going to happen. There's a little cheat sheet here on age-appropriate conversations, specifically infants and toddlers. Here's scripts of what you can say to your kids if you need to tell them, your school-age children, your teenagers, and even what to say to your adult children. Now, I know a lot of people, when it comes to the adult children, a lot of people think, oh, they deserve more answers and more details. They don't necessarily, and we need to err on the side of caution when it comes to our adult kids and not using them as our confidants, because they may still feel loyalty conflict at that age. So just supporting your kids after the emotions. So I do give a little bit of insight on what emotions or reactions you can expect. All children react very differently. Some might withdraw, some might explode, some might have questions, some might run away. That is still their fight or flight. And but it's always recommended just to kind of accept whatever their response is and then react or respond from that place. Little tips like offering warm snacks for younger kids when you have these serious conversations helps as well, just to create a nice soft environment so it's not a clinical in the principal's office kind of conversation. Yeah, chapter 3, we've got age-based parenting considerations, what you need to consider for each age. Let's go through one of them. I don't want to go through all of them, it might take too long. But for example, your school-age children, the key considerations that you're thinking about there are they have an increased awareness of family changes, their loyalty conflicts and fear of upsetting the other parent is very dominant in this or predominant in this age group. They have a strong need for their routine and predictability still here, and they have a sensitivity more to their peer and school stability. So they're going to care whether their schools are changing or not changing, whereas your younger kids wouldn't. Your parenting plan focus here should be clear and predictable schedules. minimizing school disruptions, consistent expectations across both households, and reassurance that they are not responsible for the adult decisions. This age group is very important to remember that they are not responsible for these decisions. We then also have your parenting time and weekly schedules. I go through the different possible schedules that you can have: 50-50, 60-40, 3-4 on, week off, rotating, and all the benefits of those. Communication and decision making between parents. If you're struggling with communication, there's some communication tips here as well. Transitions and holidays. We always try and separate holiday time from school term time. I see a lot of vague parenting plans that lump it in week on, week off, but that goes across the board for holidays and school. I always urge parents to separate your holiday times and your holiday parenting schedule to your actual weekly, termly school schedule. It just makes things a lot easier in the long run going forward. Just some tips on transitions with children. If any of your children struggle, there's some tips on how to make transitions easier for them. The transitions are the area with most conflict, not only between parents, but also the transitions are where you're going to see your kids acting up. I've had a few clients who've had kids screaming, and they don't know how to handle it. So I do have a few tips here as well. High conflict, parallel parenting, safety considerations. So even just giving you tips on when cooperation is not possible, what you should try and do, understanding what parallel parenting is, if it's needed for your case, boundaries versus control. This is all just stuff that I have put in that I've learned over the years myself. I've got a few common parenting plan mistakes just so that you know to avoid them, and just a whole section on a few things that I wish I knew. So this is step one of the system. Going through them quickly because there is more. I think my screen just disappeared. I don't know if there's any questions. Anna, please stop me if there's any questions. I can't see the comments there.
Yeah,
with
you're
my
good.
notes as
There's
I'm
a few
sharing the screen.
questions just in general, so we're going to wait until after you're done with the presentation. So keep going.
Okay, perfect. Let me just wait. Add to stage. There we go. Right. So once you've done your guidebook, that's just kind of giving you some guidance before you dive into the actual next part of the parenting plan system. Now, this alone, I'm going to throw it in there. This system is $249. You can get a full drafted parenting plan without paying $1,000, $2,000 upwards with your attorney going back and forth. You can get bulk of the work done for a flat price. I didn't have access to funds, and I was trying to create something for the woman or the parents trying to build a parenting plan without all the escalating legal costs. So this is it's not the start. Sorry. I thought I was scrolling everything still there. So the Untangled Parenting Plan System questionnaire gives you just instructions on how to answer them. I am going to briefly just add some details in here. I think I already started adding some fake details in here. At the start is just your regular, at every parenting plan, you need to have the details, your current location, where you live, email, and all of that. And then we start with things like, what is your current relationship dynamic with your co-parent? Now, this shapes the whole way that these AI prompts are going to draft your parenting plan. If you select, we communicate openly and respectfully, the rest of the parenting plan will be drafted in a cooperative manner. If you select that, we've got tough at the moment, but hoping it will improve, or high conflict, difficult communication, the whole drafting process will then prompt you into a more parallel parenting or stricter boundaries and less vague communication. When it's a cooperative parenting plan or co-parenting relationship, you may, there may still be space to reasonably decide, which is a term you see often in parenting plans, which I do not recommend in general to have anything in there that you will reasonably decide or reasonably agree at a later date. That just does open up for if someone is not reasonable, what happens then. So you're also going to select which age group. We're going to select here 6 to 12 and go to the next. So this is a conditional logic parenting plan. Depending on your children's ages, this is the infants and toddlers section. So you would fill a section out for each of your kids and their information. We're going through their normal information, who your child's main caregivers outside of the parents, what helps your child feel secure during current transitions between homes or caregivers. Does your child have any sleep routines you'd like both homes to follow? Are there any feeding, nap time, or daily routines we should consider when planning parenting time? How does your child cope with separation from their primary caregiver? Now, this is such an in-depth questionnaire. It's not possible for me to go through this. It's very tedious, but tedious to go through in a presentation. But if you are really concerned about your custody and your parenting plan and you're going through a divorce, each of these questions will help shape such an in-depth parenting plan for you. What length of parenting time feels developmentally or relationally appropriate to you right now? Most of these questions are great because they are also multiple choice questions. So you could have very short visits, 2 to 3 hours. Maybe it's a 6-month-old baby, and the other parent has been working away. There's not a relationship built. Half-day visits, full-day visits, overnight, weekend with one overnight, multiple overnights. So now, granted, this is for babies or for toddlers, so this age group. Would you consider a nesting arrangement? If yes, how long do you feel nesting could realistically work? So this is something I like to bring up. If you are getting divorced with younger children, generally under the age of 3 to 2 years old, nesting is where the parents will stay in the same house the kids will stay in the same house and the parents will rotate in and out. Now, the only time I would recommend that this is good is if you have an end date as well. So this is why this question is in here. If you are open to nesting, how long are you going to nest until whatever your scenario is? How long do you realistically want to nest? But I always recommend that you have an end date. Do not just say we're open to nesting and you start nesting with no actual deadline. I have a current client who they started that and now the co-parent is refusing to move out, or he's proving to be very difficult and doesn't want to be moving out. So if you are going for something like nesting, remember to put a deadline in. So this just gives you, even on this page, an idea of questions you may not have thought to even ask. You may have thought of, we definitely want to nest. We know we've got the details, but you didn't think of actually putting a deadline in. Or what would we need to be in place for nesting to work smoothly? Do you need clear schedules for rotating in and out, a separate space or a bedroom for each parent? Do you need a financial agreement, cleaning or maintenance boundaries, rules around visitors or partners, written expectations for transitions, any communication guidelines, an agreement on a timeline and an exit plan? Now, these are all different things that can make a big difference in how your nesting, whether your nesting situation is easeful and successful for you and your kids, or whether it's going to be difficult and maybe there's new partners coming and you never discussed anything. How should expenses be handled during nesting? So I'm going to shift on a little bit. What would the exit plan look like after nesting? So this is the babies. We're going to skip forward a little bit more to your older children. They're going to have different questions. So are there specific school-related expectations you'd like across both homes? So homework rules, study routines, screen time during school nights, bedtimes on school nights, clothing and school uniform management, communication with teachers, who usually handles after-school activities. So these are all questions when I draft parenting plans, specifically one-on-one with clients, these are all the things I ask to get a very detailed and thorough parenting plan. Because who usually handles the extramurals is probably who's going to continue handling the extramurals. How do you prefer decisions about new activities to be made? So there's different ways. I'll show you some of the clauses in the clause library later, where you can see what common clauses are for different scenarios. What helps your child feel grounded? Are there any developmental, emotional, or behavioral or learning considerations that you need to take into account? Any ADHD, anxiety, ASD, additional support needs? Great. Next page. So there's 18 pages, 150 questions. I'm going to skip the teen section a little bit, just see what is different. What device or social media expectations do you believe to be appropriate at this age? Would you like transportation expectations included in your plan? Does your teen use or require transport to activities or for their social life? Yes, you can answer yes, it's parent transport, or yes, they use public transport, or they have lifts with approved adults, they have their own car, or no, we want to buy a car for them. Should your teen's preferences be considered when parenting plans are adjusted? Yes, definitely. How would you describe your current co-parenting relationship? So here we're going into your current co-parenting reality. This is a great section for me, and even for yourself, your mediator, your attorney, to get a grasp, to get an understanding of where you are currently. So whether you have inconsistent communication or no communication for safety reasons, whether it's cooperative, what is your current parenting schedule like? Are both parents currently living in the same area? Just going to skip through again. How do you currently communicate with your co-parent? Are there any concerns? I'm just going to go through the other sections that I have to select something here. Obviously, it's the conditional logic. Okay. I'm just going to post something in there quickly. I don't know. Oh, there's a few that are compulsory here. One sec. Okay. Well, I'm going to have to fill in all of these. Let's just do that. Luckily, they are multiple choice. Okay. Yes. Right. Next section is your decision making and your legal custody. How would you prefer decisions to be made? Is it joint decision making? Both parents agree. Whenever there is joint decision making, I always recommend it in your parenting plan, written joint decision making. So no decisions get made without written approval from both parents, because I've seen but you did agree on the phone when we spoke, or you agreed at last transition and the other parent didn't actually agree. So always make sure if you are doing joint decisions that you want it written for both parents before any decisions get made. And then even to that extent of a written decision, a decision needs to be made within 7 days. So you want a response timeline. Within 7 days, a decision needs to be made. If not by that point, we need to schedule mediation within 21 days and get some support. Legal or litigation is a last resort. If one parent has the final say, who do you believe should have it and why? How should educational decisions be handled? So we go through each decision. How should medical, dental, psychological decisions be made? How should new activities be approached? Both parents must agree. Either parent may enroll. Costs must be agreed upon first. One parent decides after consulting the other. We usually say, there's a recommendation that you can have a cap. So 2 extramurals costs are split differently. But if one parent decides to enroll unilaterally, then they must cover all the costs. So lots of different little loopholes and little things to consider when drafting up a very detailed parenting plan. religious and cultural decisions. Should relocation require agreement? So very few parenting plans that I see actually even have a relocation clause. Even just a simple relocation clause in your parenting plan will save you a lot of stress versus not having anything, and one parent all of a sudden sends an email and says, hey, I'm intending on moving 4 hours away. So you want to at least have, so both parents must agree before any relocation, or yes, but only if it affects the school moving or schedule or travel distance. Yes, there needs to be an agreement unless relocation is for immediate safety, or no, we don't need to agree, only written notice is required, or no, each parent decides where they live. So whatever your case is, you see, you're just slowly, brick by brick, building by just even being prompted all these questions. To the extent if relocation requires notice, how much notice do you want to be given? 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, 30 days notice? What relocation distance should trigger a discussion or a review of the parenting plan? Very important. So maybe any move over 20 miles, 30 miles, 50 miles, whatever your options here are, any move that changes the child's school zone, or any move that requires a longer commute for the child. Again, if relocation happens, how should transport responsibilities be handled? Should relocation automatically trigger a scheduled review? Yes or no? Let's see. Yeah. Oh no. Let's just prompt that. Not going to make sense at all, this case study. But if anyone has any questions specifically on a parenting plan, you're busy drafting one up, you've gotten stuck, or you haven't even thought of any of these, please feel free to ask. Or if it's got nothing to do with this, ask and we will get to it soon as well. Your ideal weekly schedule. Yes, Anna.
I was just going to ask, like, what do you recommend if someone comes across one of these questions and has no idea how to answer, or like you just said, they've never even thought of this? How should they proceed? Should they proceed on like what they want, or I don't know. What's your advice for that? Like, is it going to mess up kind of like the end?
No, you want to do your best case scenario. Even if you're not sure, you want to do your best case scenario, because in an ideal world, when I do work with both parents, I have them both fill this out, and then I take both of them and I draft the parenting plan, and we'll find the inconsistencies. But
Okay.
if they don't know, do your best case scenario. But that is also why I have a basic. So the basic parenting plan system is $149, where you won't get any support from me. It'll fully draft, and then you can take it to your mediator or your attorney to review and help you, or any other expert. Whereas the premium does include a 60-minute call with me to review your parenting plan afterwards. So as you're going through this, then I would highlight any questions that you're not sure of, and you have questions for me. If you do go for the premium, then we can go through that on the call and just fine tune your parenting plan afterwards as well.
Got it.
So your ideal weekly schedule, are overnights appropriate or realistic for your children at this stage? How often would you prefer transitions? Should all children follow the same schedule? Now that as well, if you've got kids of different ages, maybe your 2-year-old is not going to follow the same schedule as your 14-year-old. How do you want to handle that? Okay, so transitions and routines, where should your handovers ideally take place? This is very important. Do not make sure that you have a location and a backup location for where transitions happen. If it's a school handover, we do this for preferred low contact between high conflict co-parents. High conflict, I never recommend it being at either parent's home. We want a neutral public space, as opposed to a home or one of the homes where the kids are. If you do have a really high conflict, if there's any restraining orders or any DV involved, we recommend there's a lot of safe exchange points, a police station, or supervised exchange centers do offer the service as well, if you are not aware. What exact times do you prefer handovers to happen? Would you like a lateness policy included? So if if one parent is always late or consistently more than 30 minutes late, do you offer a grace period? Do you 15-minute grace period, or yes, but only for valid reasons? Whatever your option is here. I think I need to select some things so we don't get there. What do you want to happen if a parent is repeatedly late? So if a parent is repeatedly late, what are you going to extra time given to the other parent? I guess a warning and automatic mediation if it continues, notes logged in the parenting app or case by case. What belongings should always travel with your kids between homes, bearing in mind medication cannot be transported back and forth with your children. I see that overlooked sometimes. So you may need to get double prescriptions if you've got any children on medication, because if your children are being transitioned at school, they cannot take medication in their bags to school. So that's something to include if you know that your child is always on medication. Should items be forgotten, or how should forgotten items be handled? I worked with parents, one couple that this was a big thing. The mom would buy new stuff. It would always just get left behind and never returned. So if this is something you're concerned about, needs to be returned at next handover, 24 hours, only if essential. The parent who has it must deliver it, or the parent who needs it must collect it. No strict rule, but you're just kind of getting an idea and you're setting a base for expectations. Now, granted, in your mediation, this could all be negotiated, but you at least are going in with a clear idea. And if the other parent hasn't even considered this, at least you are prompting them to consider it. Let me just add that in there. Who is usually responsible for transport during transitions? Are there any boundaries you want included around transitions? So maybe even you want no filming unless there's safety concerns, or no unannounced visitors at handover. I've seen scenarios where a new partner comes to transition and that upsets the whole thing. So if that's going to be really difficult for you, then you want to have language in your parenting plan stating that only parents are present at transition unless agreed upon prior. Whatever your specific scenario may be, but at least consider that there may be other people that you wouldn't want there. Or if a parent cannot make handover on time, how should the communication happen? If the child refuses or struggles at a handover, how should that be handled? This happens more often than not. There's different suggestions. Obviously, calmly encourage the transition. Parents are always to stay neutral. We allow 5 to 10 minutes to settle. Document the refusal in the parenting app and follow a therapist-supported transition plan. These are options that you want to suggest potentially. If parenting time is missed, how is that made up? Sometimes makeup time should always be offered. Should be offered if reasonable, only if for unavoidable emergencies. Missed parenting time is forfeited, or unless both parents mutually agree to an exception. Okay, let's try and speed this up a little bit. Trying to just go through some unique questions here. Would you like first right of refusal clause included? Yes or no? You want to, if you are using first right of refusal, you want to be clear on after how many hours is it triggered? Is it after 4 hours, 6 hours, overnight? Should childcare be compensated if first of right of refusal is used frequently? Sorry, that's a tongue twister. And there we go. Hold up. I forgot a question. Okay. Communication and updates. Now, this is very important, how your communication is going to be with your co-parent during the relationship. What communication method do you prefer? How frequently should you communicate, or should communication occur? Do you want general updates daily, a few times a week, weekly, only when necessary, only when essential? So that's parallel parenting. Or is there no direct communication? What type of, let's just do this. What types of child-related updates are important to share between homes? Medical, school, important changes in routine, medication adjustments, absences, whatever is important to you. If you're using an app like Our Family Wizard, everything is uploaded there, school schedules, all communication, all finances. So everything can happen through there. How should emergency situations be communicated? This is a really big one. Do you want an immediate phone call? Is it still through a third party? If there's any DV involved, do you still need to communicate via third party in an emergency? What qualifies for an emergency in your view? So you want to be clear on what qualifies for an emergency. What boundaries, if any, do you want included around communication? Now, this could be no late night messaging or no communication during work hours, or only respond to child-related topics. Would you consider using a co-parenting app? Let's see here. How should communication between the child and the other parent occur during parenting time? Is it a daily call? Is it video calls on agreed days? Does the child have their own phone and they can initiate? If the parent facilitates because the children don't have devices, only if the child requests it. So what are those communication boundaries looking like? Let me just select that quickly so we can move on. We're almost halfway there. Okay. Now, the great thing is all these answers will be sent through to you. You copy and paste them, use my AI prompts, put them into Chat, Gemini, whichever one you're using with the AI prompts, and it's going to literally take what you want and shape it into, it'll prompt you for your jurisdiction. I've even noticed that there's legal AI bots now. So if anyone is wanting to save on legal fees, you can actually get a legal AI bot for your state, apparently. That's another option. I think it's just law firms starting to train up and use AI as well. So your holidays and travel, how are you splitting the holidays? Alternating holidays each year? Is it split holidays equally every year? Now, I do not personally, from my experience, I do not recommend splitting a holiday. It's not great for anyone involved for splitting halfway through Christmas Day. Allow your children to have a full day without rushing. It's just a day. If you celebrate on the 24th, you celebrate on the 26th. But there has been some research done and even just experience from splitting a holiday in the middle for kids it's not what's best for them, let's say that. Or if I'm going to be blunt, it's a little bit that is best for parents, what the parents want. It's not what's best for the kids. So are there any specific holidays that matter to you and your family, or matter most to you and your side of the family? You can tick whichever ones you want. It may be those four. How would you like to handle birthdays? Are you alternating yearly, or doing a shared celebration and party? One parent keeps the day, the other parent gets the weekend. What travel rules feel appropriate? Is there any notice required for local travel? Is there any notice required for out-of-state travel? Do you want a detailed itinerary? Do you want flight details? Do you want accommodation details that must be shared? What are you okay with for your kids to travel without you? How much notice should be required for travel? 24 hours not for out of city, or for out of city, 7 days, domestic travel. You can see all the answers here, just different options. Are there any travel limitations? So some parents I've worked with have said no international travel until the children are 18. How should passports, social security cards, IDs, or any travel documents be handled? Is one parent keeping, for example, maybe one parent keeps the passport, the other parent keeps the social security card, or is everything being held by a neutral third party, which I've had a couple do as well. But there's many options on structuring your parenting plan. trying to go through this as quickly. I don't know if I should go through anymore because I see Melissa and Emily are on there. But to give you an idea, this is how the the questions are structured. There's another 8 pages of questions. But from what you can see, it's even giving you, because it's multiple choice, it's even giving you ideas on how to do it or what you can select. Once you've done that questionnaire, I'm going to quickly pop through here. Sorry, it stopped sharing again. Because I know we got questions. I want to share the stage with everyone else and not target today. So you've got your questionnaire here. I'll quickly open the clause library for you just to give you an idea of what it looks like. Not necessarily, we definitely cannot go through the clause library because don't have a heart attack. It's actually 80 pages long. Let's see here. So just to give you an example of what the parenting plan or the clause library looks like. So everything is in the same structure as the parenting plan, how you would structure your parenting plan. Each section correlates with the questionnaire as well. So you can, as you're going through the questionnaire, you can even have the clause library open and go through the common clauses that are used in that specific section. So, for example, let's go to section 2 here. Where's section 2? Okay. So a cooperative parenting plan, you might have a phrase saying parenting time for infants and toddlers will be arranged to support secure attachment with both parents. Time with each parent will be structured around the child's development stage, sleep, routine, feeding needs, and emotional capacity. Now that's a clause you see very common. It's very vague. Now, if you were going to do a high conflict version, you may say something like parenting time for children under 5 will follow a structured, developmentally appropriate. Oh, sorry, that's not the right clause there. Oh, there we go. Adjustments may only be made in writing and with mutual agreement and professional guidance. So there's a little extra phrase and you're giving more of a deadline. Oh, not a deadline, but it's going to be in writing. Overnights. So if there's overnights for your toddlers, you can see there's different clauses for each and every little section. So nap, sleep, infants and toddlers. I want to actually just go more to not the children's sections, but one second. As you can see, there's so many clauses. Okay, so different clauses here for a base reality statement on the current co-parenting reality. So the parenting plan reflects the current co-parenting reality, including strengths, challenges, and communication patterns, while prioritizing the emotional and developmental needs of the children. If there's unpredictable communication, parents acknowledge the communication is currently inconsistent or unpredictable. Both agree to use the agreed primary communication channel to reduce misunderstandings and ensure timely updates. So it just goes more and more in depth and more in detail depending on the conflict level. So just a whole bunch of clauses for you can copy and paste these in if you want. And let's see here. So once you've gone through the clause library, you can also then see the AI prompts and you can copy and paste these into your AI with all your responses from the questionnaire with these prompts, and AI will help you do a lot. You don't even need me. You don't even need the back and forth with your attorney. You will get a really good draft just by using AI. So here you can see here, I give you exactly step-by-step download, create a project, upload your base files. From there, paste the setup prompt. So this is your setup prompt. I'm building a parenting plan using the Untangled parenting plan system. I've uploaded my template, the clause library, into this project for you to use as reference. Do not generate my parenting plan yet. First confirm you can see the files and tell me what you need next. So all of my prompts will even get your AI to ask you more questions if there's something missing. And then you can continue to upload your prompts. I see I'm showing a screen, but not sharing it to anyone here.
I was going to let you finish and let you know, but
Thanks.
they can get access to that bank, right?
They can get access to all of this. If they have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I want to open the stage and take a sip of water quickly.
Yes.
And see if there's anyone that has any questions on this, or Melissa, Emily, if there's anything you guys want to add, anything you noticed.
Yeah, I think that, this is a program that's specific to Cristin, so it's not necessarily part of the Divorce Allies membership. So it's something that's very nuanced. And if you need that particular help, then that's a way that as a VIP member, you can have your hour with Cristin. You can talk through some of the nuances. Like if you start with a parenting plan, most of the time, if you have a lawyer, they have a template of a parenting plan that has been approved through that court system. And so every county is going to be different. And they may have like a template that's been approved through the court system already, and you can ask them for it. They might want to charge you for it to go through it with you. And again, ask them what the fees are, because you might want a more robust parenting plan. Those are usually, like, quite frankly, garbage, but they have been vetted. And so it's just, if they can easily give it to you, great. You can know like what's already been vetted through the court system, but then it's really just a starting point to, if you have special needs, if you have any specific situations. So there's no audio you guys can hear?
Yeah.
Okay. So that might be on your end, but we can, and somebody said, as a gray divorce, I do not recommend staying until the kids get older and age out. This doesn't get better with time. Yeah. But what we're seeing is a lot of people in the 20 years to 30 years of marriage that are waiting until their kids are 18 to get divorced. And again, even if they're at the tail end, if you have a toxic spouse, a lot of times you're putting together a parenting plan so that you limit the co-parenting conflict, right? So you might have a clause in there that says, we'll go back to mediation, or how are we going to pay for things? Are we going to use our family wizard to communicate? How do we, if somebody takes away the phone of the kid as a punishment, like how am I supposed to? So there's a lot of things that are still in older kids. I think the older kids, you have to be more concerned about, like, is the court listening to them not want to go to a parent? So, like, I'm just telling you right now, I have a 15-year-old. I swear to God, everything that I say, the sky is purple, he's going to argue with me. So, like it's literally contrarian thinking. If I say you're going to go do this thing, he's going to say, no, I'm not. I'm going to do it another way. So I think it's having an understanding of taking that control back to your purview, and positioning up. A toxic spouse, typically fathers as well, are not going to come up with a perfect parenting plan. So that just means taking the steps that you think it requires. And there's also a line of getting too detailed and controlling. Is it enforceable? How much is the parenting plan its own barricade? Like we talk a lot about, hey, I will tell you that something's happening, and if you don't respond, I'm assuming that you knew about it. Like everything's communicated through our family wizard. If you don't check it, that's on you. Like how do you shift the burden to the other spouse so that you're not waiting for their approval? You're not waiting for their response. You're saying lack of response is approval. Like 24 hours of response is approval, things like that. So I think that that's all I have to kind of talk about that piece. But we did have some questions about mediation and private judging. So whenever we're ready to flip over to that for maybe the next half hour, we'll talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, go straight in. I just want to add one final thing and I'm done. Don't be surprised if your attorney is like, no, we've got one. Don't use another one. My clients hear that all the time. Don't be surprised if there's pushback. because they don't want to have to, they know their template, so they can scan it. It's kind of very vague, very simple. They can get away with it. But it's you need to parent going forward. So if you get pushback, don't just say, oh, well, I'm just doing what my lawyer told me. You need to parent after this. So if you want something in your parenting plan and it's a non-negotiable, then it's non-negotiable for you.
Yeah. Parenting plans are still somewhat legal documents. And so, you know, your lawyer is getting involved because they're saying, well, the judge isn't going to do that. The judge isn't going to allow you to have that sort of control. So, I mean, we've gone into mediation with a very robust parenting plan that because we've had domestic violence or other issues. And literally during the mediation, they'll be like, you know what? We don't really want to review that. We want to go back to the standard parenting plan and negotiate from there. So like, this is still advocating of sections then. Okay, fine. Then I want this section of this parenting plan. I want, you know, these clauses to be included. Like, it's not an all for nothing. But at the end of the day, if it's not enforceable, and because nobody's going to come in and try to enforce it, if it's you trying to control what happens in the other person's house, it's just not going to probably fly. So it's trying to create like end bookends, if you will, of what is a reasonable behavior. But it's also, how are you going to co-parent? If you focus more on the co-parenting as opposed to controlling the other side, you're going to have a much better parenting plan that's actually going to make it through the system. Some people asked about private judging as opposed to private mediation. And I think it's actually a really good question that will kind of lead into, you know, at all times, we are working with you to assuming that your lawyers are gatekeeping some of this process, assuming that the mediator is going to tell you who you can bring into the mediation and who you can't. And so just from a big picture perspective, there are no rules in mediation. Okay. Lawyers have created arbitration and mediation in order to bring the courtroom outside of the courtroom in these other sort of non-binding ways, which means that most mediators take a 40-hour course to do divorce mediation, and that's it. And that is not even governed by any credentialing site. There just are no rules. So if your mediator has rules then you need to ask them. And I think that you need to ask them when you interview a mediator before you put forth, you know, a lot of times the lawyers are sourcing the mediator and it's based on who they've worked with in the past. It's based on former judges or lawyers. It's a handful of people, typically 5 to 10 people in any county that are former lawyers or former judges, and they have relationships with everybody in town. And you need to probably also be a part of interviewing and vetting that mediator. And when you interview them, ask them, what are their rules and who will they allow in the room? Now, again, if there are no rules, then that means whatever the mediator puts in as their rule is their rules. That means you may not choose that mediator. A lot of times, so there's no rule that you can't have a financial expert witness. And there is a difference between a financial expert witness and a financial consultant. You know, a consultant is a little bit more, the communication is more privileged than a financial expert. A financial expert their role is for the court. They're there to be there to educate the court and the judge, and they're hired by you, but a lot of their communication and your communication with them is discoverable. So a consultant is not, it's privileged. So, but the moment they switch to an expert, it becomes discoverable. So all of those conversations that you thought you were having in private now come to the light of day. So ask the mediator who they let in the room. Could it be your CPA or your financial advisor? Sure. Do they know divorce? Probably not. You know, do they know negotiation? Probably not. When we're coming in the room, it's because we understand negotiation with toxic spouses, we understand mediation, and we understand the financials. And we're advocating for you. We're protecting you from being manipulated by the numbers. And I'll give you an example. On Friday, we were in mediation, and the alimony offer that they would never offer it until we got to mediation. So we specifically said, we went into mediation and said, give us your alimony number. We don't even want to talk about anything else until you tell us what the alimony number. And the alimony number should have been around 15,000. And they said, well, we're going to base the alimony off of the base salary. So the alimony is going to be based off the base salary. And then there's going to be 20% of the bonus and the stock options. And that's going to be on an after-tax basis. So that was their number. Can anybody tell me anybody in the room tell me what that number is? Nope. So everybody in the room, including the mediator, was like, oh, okay, well, that's a decent offer. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know what that number is, and I'm the financial person. So everybody in the room acted like they knew what that meant as a number. Nobody could have possibly known what it meant. So I told the mediator to go back and calculate it based on 2025. We got 2025. Tell me what that math would be. And the math came back as 3,000 base maintenance and possible 3,000 with a cap on it on all the, and this is a person that made, close to $1 million a year, and the other person made about 50,000. Okay. So I was like, so if I add those together, that's 6,000. So we're starting at 6,000 and we're at 15. We're not close, right? So you need to get people to really understand, but mediation is a non-binding with a mediator. The mediator is the referee. They can't tell you what to do. If they have some knowledge, because they're a judge, they can tell you what the court would do. And that's usually where the gaslighting happens. So they're like, well, the court's not going to give that to you. Well, the court's not going to do that. Well, the court's not going to blah, 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 blah. So private judging is very different. A private judge is more like an arbitrator. So typically people understand mediation and arbitration. Arbitration is binding. So you're paying a private judge to run a hearing or a trial, but it's not going to be on the public record of the court. So nobody can attend it. And somebody said we didn't get a choice as to the mediator we got. Yeah. So what they're talking about is that was a court-ordered mediator. So certain people, typically still lawyers, are on a list in the court, and every court system has a different list. And so it is going to be that you were assigned a mediator, and sometimes that mediator is paid by the system. Some of our clients have had mediation days where you're each assigned like a pro bono lawyer, and there's a mediator there, and they're trying to work through these situations. So again, I think everybody could offer in. I know that one of our other former clients was in the room as well, and they were talking about, gray divorce, and they had a mediator as well. And sometimes the mediator doesn't allow lawyers. They just want the couple. So again, the one thing that I can tell you is how you control this. Now, private judging is different. That's going to be a trial. That's going to be binding. You're going to choose that. And then you have expert witnesses that testify. Mediation, private mediation, it's confidential. What happens what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That's what happens in mediation. So those offers cannot be told about in trial. You can offer whatever you want. You can go back and forth. It's all confidential. At the end of the day, you're still going to have to write up an agreement that's going to go back to the court, and they're going to approve it. So that means there's still negotiations. So the one way that you can, you were assigned a mediator you didn't like, you go into mediation and you get gaslit by your lawyer, by the other lawyer, you're bullied, like, this is a good deal, you're not going to get any better in court, it's going to cost you $100,000 to go to trial. the one way that you can control mediation is you say, give me 5 to 7 days to review this offer and I will get back to you. They are going to hate that. They're going to then cue the gaslighting even harder. Oh, you don't want to leave this room. No, we've been here all day. Just sit back in mediation and say, does it make sense? When you go and buy a car, do you sometimes need some time to think about it? And that's a $20,000 to $50,000 car. When you go and buy a house, do you get some time to think about it, to get an inspection, to check with some people? So now you're going into mediation to do your entire life, 20 years of your life, and they want to make you settle that day. It doesn't make sense. So the only thing that you can do is say, give me some time. Like, you didn't let my financial person be here. You didn't let my lawyer be here. You want to control this, yet you don't want to give me advice. I need some time to check with my people. You want me to sign a parenting plan? But I came with one that I thought was good and you didn't like the clauses. This feels rushed. This feels under coercive control. This feels like I'm negotiating under duress, right? This is a stressful day. You can walk away and literally, if everybody really is bullying you, you get your pretty little ass up and you literally walk out of the room. Like, what are they going to do? Pin you down? Like, the only thing that you can do in that situation is sign a really bad deal. It's still not binding unless, which we've had it happen. We had it happen on New Year's Eve. They wanted to get everybody to sign. I tried to encourage my client to not sign it, but it was big dollars. They had been involved for a long time, and she signed it away, and they submitted it to the court that day, and it was final. It was done. And you don't think the next week she called me and she was like, she's like, I should have listened to you. I don't know why I did that, but I felt like everybody was pressuring me and I had to. You don't have to. You can take your chance in court and see what a judge would do. If it's really that bad, then get a second opinion. If you don't trust your lawyer, get another limited scope attorney in the 7 days to take a look at your agreement, to take a look at, get your parenting plan coordinator to take a look at the parenting plan and be like, ooh, no, take this clause out. This is not good for you, right? Get your financial person, get your mortgage person, but understand that those rules are artificial rules that everybody is making up, and they're not, it's not true. It's a lot of misinformation, and mediation is still sort of the Wild West. So that's the biggest advice that I can give you in a lot of those situations, that you do have control. You didn't get a choice of a mediator. That's probably because you didn't pay for the mediator. It was probably court appointed, and most states require you to go to a mediator for 2 to 4 hours on custody matters, specifically on custody matters, before you can see the judge. So that's why you bringing in a parenting plan, even if they meld them together, right? You got the crappy template, you got your great template. Now, when you come to mediation, guess what? Let's negotiate between these two templates, right? I want these clauses. You might want to highlight, like sometimes you can match, like compare them in Word. What's the differences? Highlight the differences. Like we did that in a case, they still didn't like the clauses because it's a control thing at that point.
Yeah, and clauses for mortgage can make or break whether you can actually execute on it or not. The language in the agreement makes all the difference in the world, and the attorneys don't necessarily know if they're writing it correctly. So getting it reviewed by somebody who actually knows divorce and mortgage, because not all the mortgage people know exactly what the clauses do either, is a good idea, just because I've seen cases where they've said, oh, you're getting this much in support, but you have to use that to pay the mortgage or something like that, it zeroes out your support as income for a mortgage. So you've just screwed yourself. You've just taken away income that qualifies you to execute on the home that you now have 90 days to do. So you just, and I'm not trying to do the fear thing, but it's just like, hey, there's things in there, just like clauses for, children and stuff that can make or break. And taking those 7 days and really exposing the weaknesses of that agreement and beefing it up and making it stronger will only benefit you.
I mean, if somebody doesn't want to give you 7 days to think about it, it's a pretty big red flag.
Yeah.
And you're only bringing in the strategist during that 7 days to tell you if anything is really, really not great, right? I reviewed one yesterday with a client, and we went through the whole agreement, and we can't offer legal advice. We're offering like does that impact the financial? Like, have we seen that clause litigated in a post-divorce situation? Have we seen that that's like too vague or too specific? A lot of times with the house, we need to have a certain alimony for 5 years in order to, and there's just certain rubrics. So maybe you're negotiating those pieces. And quite frankly, if they don't let you have people in the room, you're the one that needs to be the negotiator. You're the one that needs to know what's important. You've already talked to Cristin. You already know, hey, worst case, here's these 5 things. Make sure that you put that in there, right? You already know your non-negotiables. You already know from a financial standpoint, you know what, I should get $500,000. Now, can you agree to 460? Sure, but you know what you're giving up, as opposed to they offer 460 and you're like, well, I don't know. Should I have 500? Should I have 600? Should I have 700? Like nobody's putting it in a spreadsheet. If you're negotiating in mediation and nobody's working off a spreadsheet, you're being manipulated. I'm telling you right now, because I see numbers in my brain, and half the time I'm like, I have no idea what this picture looks like. 90 minutes later, we have it all in a nice spreadsheet. I'm like, oh, I totally understand now, right? I'm the financial person. So there's not a chance. And again, ask questions in the mediation. Do not assume that because nobody's asking questions that they know what is happening. They don't. They don't want to admit that they don't know. And so continue to, and how questions like, well, how is it possible that I get no assets? How am I going to live? How could I live on $2,000? Like if they don't have a solution, then they're going to have to admit that it's a bad deal. So a lot of this is prepping in advance. A lot of it is making sure you have the right pieces of the puzzle. And if you have to go into mediation by yourself or with your lawyer, understand that you can leave if in your gut it doesn't feel like a good offer, or you just don't think you can sign on the because they're going to be like, well, let's sign off on this. It's still non-binding typically, right? Ask them, is this binding? Are we done here? Because a lot of times it's like a couple weeks afterwards that you're still negotiating back and forth, and they'll have no problem negotiating more terms, and try to stick you on the terms that you agreed to. Cristin, what were you going to say?
The how question is gold for that parent that's fighting for 50-50 but doesn't actually have the capacity. Scenario here, they come with a parenting plan, they want 50-50. That they work away 3 times in the month where they're gone for 4 days at a time. So instead of saying you can't, just ask, okay, if we do 50-50, how is that going to work? How are you going to take care of the kids when you are on business on the 1st of every month in Vegas, whatever it is? But those how questions, if in the parenting perspective of it is gold, 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 especially someone fighting, because no one fights harder than the parent that couldn't look after the kids while you were married, but afterwards now they want 50-50. That person fights really hard. So all you need to do is lock them down on how do they plan on adjusting to having the kids 50% of the time when their work was very demanding and they could never take care of the kids during the marriage.
Yeah. How's it going to work when you're busy? How are you going to take care of, how are you going to get somebody else to, and when I'm not in the room for a mediation, I tell my clients the only questions they can ask are how questions. If you can't figure out how to phrase that question as a how, you're going to be like, well, what are you going to do with the kids? That's very instigative. How are you going to accommodate when you're busy? How are you going to handle it when you're traveling? How are we going to pay for things and share costs? How? You're forcing them to have a solution as opposed to telling them what your opinion of what they're doing, and they're going to feel like it's sort of instigative. And so the other thing is, even if I'm not allowed to be in the Zoom mediation, if you're in Zoom and you have a phone, put me on speaker. I'll be quiet. I'll listen, and I'll text you what to say during the mediation. And again, is that, skirting the line? Yeah, maybe, but they didn't say you couldn't have somebody on speaker. And they usually do say, well, just have that person on call and you can call them during the breaks to discuss with them. Sometimes I need to hear what the mediator says, and I would encourage you to listen. Every time the mediator's in the room and they come from the other side and they start telling you things, write it down. Oh, okay, is there anything else? Write it down. Is there anything else? Write it down. Don't start to go back and forth and say, well, that's not right. That's not the truth, mediator. No. Get everything that they have to say, because they're going to remember it, right? Because they just came from that other side, right? Okay, is there anything else? Is there anything else? Is there anything else? Is that it? And they'll keep on talking, and probably tell you a lot of information. Then you go back and through every single thing and say why that is incorrect, or why your offer still already addresses that. But then you even ask the mediator, well, how is it possible that their offer would be good? Like, how could I take this offer? It seems really one-sided. How could I understand this better? And it'll force you to pause, because it's actually not easy. Like, I would encourage you to start doing it in your daily life. For every conflict, for every situation, ask how questions when you're asking questions, because it'll get you used to it. But it also forces you to pause, because you're like, how would I phrase that? Because I want to say, why are you doing that? Or what is that? Or, like, it's not easy. So it gets you to pause. When you pause, people fill the space with talking. And so let them tell you more. Like, and you're writing it down and you're thinking, okay, how am I going to ask this question about how ridiculous the offer is? Right? Like, and I asked the question, like, how do you calculate that on 2025? I asked the mediator. I was like, because you guys all seem to understand. And I didn't say it like that, right? Right? If I said, well, you guys all understand the number, obviously, that's very confrontative, right? So instead I was like, well, how would we calculate that? Do you guys understand? Because I can't figure out how we would calculate that. The mediator's like, and I was doing it on purpose. I was like, could you go back and ask them how to calculate it based on 2025? And when they came back, it was horrific, but it also exposed all of the pieces of the calculation that we would have been assuming. Assuming is really bad in mediation. Well, I don't think he's going to take that offer. How could we make that offer better? How could we have a better solution? How? That's it. It is probably the best thing. And I can't remember what book that was in. I think that was the lie spotting book, because I was talking to a client the other day. I think that was, it wasn't in the Never Split This. No, it wasn't in that, because I looked back. I think it was the lie spotting, but again, just in your daily, like with your kids, well, how are we going to eat out every day and be healthy? Now they either have to say we can't, or they would say how we would. So how offers to force somebody to give a solution. If they don't have a solution, then you come about and give your solution, but you've called them out. Whereas if you give a solution to a toxic person, just like my, they're going to say, I don't like that one. That's not a good idea, right? Well, first you ask them, well, how would we fix that? How would we do that? Well, I don't know how we would do that. Great, I do. Boop, here you go. They've admitted that they don't know how because it was impossible. And then you offer the solution. So I think we're getting close to the time. Oh, we're exactly at the time.
Exactly.
So if you had some audio issues during this presentation, you will receive the audio recording that you can look at after this link that you came to. If you come to the link again, it's going to be the audio recording already there. So that's helpful. But Cristin or Anna, you want to kind of close out the session, and maybe we can talk about what to expect next week as well, which I can cover.
Cristin, do you have anything to wrap up?
No, not really. I think just in a nutshell, anything you do vaguely now, vague finances, vague parenting plan, if it's vague, it's going to cost you a lot more money later. You're going to say yes to something that you maybe didn't even know, you didn't understand. So ask those how questions and get clear. Don't accept vague. If you're not sure, ask.
Yeah.
Perfect. I have a little closing activity. So I always advocate for Insight Timer and their little challenges that they do, or just in general. But the last 12 days was the Nervous System Reset Challenge. And I think you could probably go back and look at it today. You have like a few days to access it before it disappears. But they did some really cool, different like physical challenges that helps you get out of your head and more into your body. And I wanted to share two of them. I'll just be brief. So the first one is wherever you're sitting, just kind of gaze forward, because whenever our nervous system is really activated, our eyesight tends to just tunnel vision, because whatever the chemical reaction that it releases, it wants you to only focus on the danger ahead. So your vision quite literally like disappears on your peripherals. So imagine like me, when I think I lost my keys, I literally cannot imagine the room around me. I'm only focused on my pockets, and it like my brain cannot perceive what else is going on. So the first activity is just to kind of look forward, soften your gaze, and just note without moving your head, just start noticing everything in your peripherals from as far left and far right as you can go. Like I can see the corner of this shelf. I can see a pillow, a blue pillow on my sofa right now, and just start going outwards to inwards, naming everything that you can see, and then work your way back out. This kind of helps your body realize, okay, you're not in imminent danger. You're okay. There is not a tiger running at you from straight on. We're safe. And this starts to just kind of help calm your vagus nerve. The other one that I did a few months ago was finger tapping, but this one is to just kind of brush the outside of your fingers and go inwards. So it's like your inhale is up, exhale is down. And then you just alternate fingers, inhale up, exhale down, middle finger, inhale up, inhale down, and just go up and down as many times as you need to calm your system and kind of reset. And these I think are great, especially if you're in like an online mediation or an in-person mediation or a deposition. These are things that you can silently do in your own quiet space to kind of get back to your body and realize that, okay, nervous system, a bear is not chasing me in the woods. I'm just a little bit nervous and elevated. So it's reminding your body, you're not going to die in this position right now, but your nervous system can't tell the difference between that danger and what's happening. So those were just my little tips that I learned from this week, and hopefully everyone can use them in their own way. Next week, Melissa is
Yeah, and those things work because they actually, they're neurologically, they reduce anxiety. So there is an actual reason why they seem very simple doing these certain things, but my father's a neurotherapist, so I know that from listening to him. So anyway, next week we're going to go back to finances. And so we're doing some like implementation and how do we look at a sample position statement. We've even changed some ways that we're doing the position statement based on some recent experience in mediation. So we'll kind of walk you through some of the changes. We'll probably be looking at some settlement offers, talking more about what to expect in mediation. So let's assume that you're bringing some of these things to mediation. And then the following week is typically with one of our legal advocates. And so Tracy B, I'm speaking with her this week to see if she'll be joining us. A lot of things going on with her. And then, or it's Adrian, who is our resident former lawyer who talks about, various hearings and things like that. And how does this come into play? I think somebody had asked questions about discovery and stalling disclosures and things like that we'll be talking about. Those are not necessarily things that you can prevent happening. And so you can't control the other person if they don't give you documents or if they force you to work harder to get the documents. But what we're going to be talking about next week is really how can you still move forward regardless of the documents and put together an offer that forces them to give you the documents to prove you wrong. So that'll be something that we're covering. And then the final week, we always come back to Anna and we'll be talking about content creation. And this week, we have 3 young women who are interning and shadowing us. So they're actually in the other room listening to the whole presentation. And Anna's going to be working with them. But we're creating something like a boot camp that takes content to cash. And so I'll be interested to talk to you guys with Anna at the end of the month and say, okay, how do you in maybe 5 to 7 days take a creative project and start making cash from it? So we'll see if these guys can do it over the course of the week. And then we'll have a guide for you ready by the end of the week because they're going to create it. So anyway, it'll be fun times. So thank you for joining, and you'll receive the recording and some additional resources by the end of the week. If you have any questions or you are a VIP, we sent out an email to all of you with the link of how to book your 1 hour with one of the 4 of us. You can use it a different person each month, but I would encourage you to work with the person that is most relevant to you right now, right? If it's really a pressing issue, but is there a rhyme or reason of who to work with? Nope. Just give it a try and come prepared with questions and your situation. And you can book it online and we'll keep you posted. If you have any questions, you can email hello@thedivorceallies.com or divorceallies@gmail.com. So we look forward to talking to you soon.
See you later.